of actually getting those wires, either if it's wires, getting those wires up on utility poles in New York is very, very expensive. We've been working with the State Public Service Authority, I'm trying to remember where I am, to try to streamline that process so we can at least move the cable and the wiring aspect of high-speed internet, but we're also encouraging wireless high-speed internet and support for cell services, both communication, regular traditional cellular phones, and the use of cellular for high-speed internet to make up for those areas like, for instance, Ithaca, which has topographical challenges in Tompkins County, or in the Catskills where you might have issues related to the mountains, and of course the valleys along the Hudson all make it very challenging to get those last few communities or last few homes access. And we're continuing to work to try to get dollars to those communities that are moving those projects forward. So I'd encourage you to continue to, however, if you're working with local community members or there's somebody who's interested in trying to find out what federal dollars are available, always reach out to us. Happy to advocate. Happy to try to be of some help in that regard. We're going to go to Jeff. Jeff is in Ithaca. Jeff had a question. Is Jeff there? Jeff in Ithaca.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
The question I had is we mentioned like bipartisan a lot, but it seems like in the news, it's like we're so far divided as a country right now. I don't know that. I'm unsure that the bipartisan decisions are being made. Like, how can we find out what really occurs? Like, I feel like things happen and then, Republicans or whatever will say, well, yeah, we helped get it done, but yet we held it up for so long. So I'm just confused about the information we're getting, and just because it's being put out there doesn't mean it's correct.
Well, I agree, and I always encourage people to obviously question information, whether it's sent out by us, by the other side, by government, or even if you get in the media. And quite frankly, we are surrounded. In particular, I'd argue when folks get their information from social media platforms, I'm not suggesting that you're getting them from Facebook or X, but rather just if those are the feeds that you use to get access to your information, a lot of that is culled in a way to kind of complement what you already think, and that's not useful to me. It's not useful to you. So always be skeptical. I tell people watch different channels. I mean, I flip through ones that may not necessarily be the first I watch or listen to, but I try to make sure I'm getting information from multiple platforms so I can kind of make up my own mind, right? And I represent a lot of smart folks who understand how necessary it is to kind of digest what information, take it in, and then give me your opinion. But I want to address the bipartisanship issue. I can't say I know exactly when you say Republicans held it up and then we said yeah, we're getting it done. But I do think it's important that to at least note that there are always going to be those times where we are divided. But there are and have been bipartisan efforts. I would point to the debt ceiling agreement, and I point to both the short-term funding, this continuing resolution, and appropriations. As I said before, the House adopts appropriations bills, the Senate adopts appropriations bills, and then we have to negotiate between the two. And here's a great example: the National Defense Authorization Act. Two very different bills, one from the Senate, one from the House. We are in the midst of bipartisan negotiation right now. I serve on the conference committee between the two houses to negotiate a bipartisan agreement, and we're going to get that done. The Farm Bill, which has been delayed, this is America's agriculture policy, critically important. We're within the Ag Committee working in a bipartisan way, Republicans and Democrats, to craft a Farm Bill that we can present to the House. We believe it'll have bipartisan support. And then we're working with the Senate. We think actually we'll have a bipartisan bill. As I'm answering your question, let me also remind you to hit *3 if you have a question. I want to get you in the queue. If you have a question, hit *3. But I really appreciate this one because I do think it's important. We do get focused on the things that divide us. I understand it. Even I fall prey to it sometimes. But I will tell you that we're working. I know that we're working to address where we can bipartisan agreement. The debt ceiling agreement. We averted an economic crisis. Yeah, there are members of my party who would prefer not to raise the debt ceiling and allow it and figure out what happens next. I don't happen to agree, and a good number of us worked in a bipartisan way to come up with an agreement that ultimately allowed for debt ceiling increase, allows us to continue to operate this federal government, not crash the economy, and to meet the needs of the public. And so I mentioned some of the appropriations bills. We're going to meet in the middle. We're going to adopt something. The Senate's got to adopt something. We're going to come to some agreement. FAA. This is the policy for aviation in America. We have to reauthorize that bill every 3 years, and every 5 years. And that bill is bipartisan. We unanimously adopted it in committee. It got overwhelming bipartisan support. I've got about 7 initiatives in that bill that will help the Ithaca Airport, the Binghamton Airport, and other small other small community airports around upstate New York. That's going to be adopted in a bipartisan way. And so I get that we do get focused on the things that divide us. It's very easy to do. I understand that. And again, I fall prey to it as well. But there are big initiatives happening that are bipartisan. And I will tell you that, we're working this week. We proposed a bill simply to change the language in criminal code in the city of Washington, D.C., to eliminate the R word, R-E-T-A. I won't get to the rest as it relates to those with developmental disabilities from the criminal code of Washington, D.C. I'm working with a progressive Democrat to change that language. We're working with my colleagues across the aisle to expand lunch and snack access in daycare and Head Start. And so there are those opportunities. Happy to share them with you. Happy to take the criticism when you think I'm wrong. But I do want you to be somewhat hopeful that we understand. I understand certainly bipartisan government results in bipartisan solutions, and that's the only way we get anything done. So I really appreciate the call, the question. I know that it's troubling. I know that you see stuff that you don't like that I might say, or you see stuff that somebody else says or does you might not like. It's very important to work to recognize that we work in a bipartisan way. If you have a question, hit star 3. I'm happy to take those questions. We're going to go to Roberts in Margaretville.
Yes, Mark.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
When are you Democrats and Republicans going to get this thing straightened out about our budget? Because you've only got 14 days on this month, and we are going to be in shit up the creek without a paddle again.
Well, good point, although I don't want to be in that creek with or without a paddle. But that said, it's a great question. As I mentioned, yes, I was very helpful in negotiating a process that moved. I didn't agree with some of the bills. In fact, I voted against the ag bill because the cuts were too deep to farming and included a prohibition on access to birth control that I just think is not appropriate. And so that bill didn't pass. But I will say we moved a process that allowed us to consider individual budget bills. So the way when I was a county executive, I wrote a budget. The legislature adopted the budget, and that's the way we do it. Here in Washington, the House and the Senate adopt individual budget bills. There's 12 budget bills. We will have acted on 8 already. The Senate hasn't adopted 1, and we cannot negotiate if the Senate hasn't. The Senate committees have, but we need them to start moving on budget bills as well. And as they do, we'll negotiate. And so, number 1, we are moving that process. We've adopted 80% of the budget, and we need to act. To your point, up against the deadline. I've made clear, as several of my colleagues, a government shutdown is unacceptable. We're doing the work as aggressively as we can. That means we should keep the government open as we do it. And so I support continuing to keep the government functioning, just as we averted a shutdown the last time, as we consider these budget bills, and we're moving along one after another. Now, the good news is, no matter what stage we're in the adoption of those bills, the House and Senate can negotiate, and we ought to be negotiating to get these done. And the Speaker understands that for members like me, government shutdowns not acceptable. The Senate, we obviously need to get working, and we are, in fact, today considering a budget bill on interior spending, national parks, etc., federal lands. We're considering the transportation bill, and so we're moving those forward. Listen, I don't want anything delayed. I was responsible for getting a budget done on time and balanced every single time. This is a little bit different. Only in Washington do you consider a budget in 12 separate bills and wait till the end. But the truth of the matter is, we are in the House moving. We need the Senate to do the same, and we are very comfortable. I am very comfortable serving in whatever capacity to negotiate an agreement between Republicans, Democrats, House, and Senate. But I do appreciate the call, a question, and I thank you for that. Want to get to Sherry. Sherry's in Binghamton, New York. Sherry?
Yes, hello.
Oh, you're there, ready to go. Rock and roll.
Yep. Okay, so my question to you is, what are your views on harm reduction and treatment? Like, we have a crisis out here. You know, there's people they're dying. I've been to Washington D.C. I've done the Trail of Truth, the national one, the one that they have in Binghamton, and the numbers are staggering.
Yeah. I will say this: substance use disorder and the opioid epidemic is the health crisis of our lifetime. It is, and if it were not for COVID, we would have been talking about this as the single most significant public health crisis in this country. And of course, it is a priority for me, both personally and professionally. And when I served in local government, I too saw far too many people lose their lives to overdose and substance use disorder. And I will tell you, I believe that substance use disorder is an illness, and I know there are those, and I'll be happy to take issue with. Nobody chooses to be addicted. They may have chosen to make use of a drug. Fentanyl, for instance, and synthetic opioids are not the same as marijuana and pot was, as marijuana was 20, 30, 40 years ago. These change the chemical compound of your brain, and they attack the nerves in a way that addiction becomes very, very powerful, very, very powerful, and takes too many lives. So let me just tell you, I believe we've got to deal with drug trafficking. We have to enforce the law. We've got to shake up and crack down on those who are selling and dealing. We also have to invest in treatment, which is why, as a local elected official, we actually Dutchess County created the public health, the mental health, the substance use model that the state of New York now funds. And we've been working with Jason Gardner in Broome County, with our friends in Sullivan County, Delaware, all 11 counties. But those who are moving forward with treatment programs, we've been helping them identify federal dollars. We've been working to connect them with state resources, and I've connected them and provided them the tools that we used in my former home county, Dutchess, to provide for treatment. So I believe in intervention. I believe in treatment services. I believe that those who struggle with substance use disorder, that is a lifetime challenge that demands that not only are treatment available, not only should insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid provide assistance, but we also as individuals, as loved ones and family members, need to know what resources exist. It's why I'll continue to press for expanded access to Narcan, why we continue to press for broadened access to the 988 mental health line, and make sure that there are mobile intervention teams and treatment centers within reach. Now, this is a crisis, and if you think the public health, the physical health system, like hospitals and whatever, and healthcare providers are challenged, those in the mental health world, this system's on life support, and so we're going to have to continue to provide assistance and support the continued expansion of community-based mental health services. And so I embrace harm reduction. I've lived this particular area for a number of years. I've seen its capacity to save lives, and I think that we have to use every tool in the toolbox to either intervene and prevent use, to provide treatment, and for those who may be living with addiction, to help them transition back to a life that is healthy and independent of drug use. So all of that on the table. I'd love it for you if you're back in Washington anytime soon to come look for us. But we're working with, in particular, your area, the mental health providers and treatment groups in Broome County. And some of the work that the county executive, Jason Garner, and others are committed to, I think will make a difference, and they definitely have my support.